Welcome back to the channel, guys. So in consideration, Konami bringing back the MGS series finally coming out of limbo, I'm going to rank the best games from 1 to 5. Let's do this. So before I tackle the list of games, what I did want to say first and foremost is it's great to see Metal Gear Solid back. It's been dead in the water really since Metal Gear Solid 5, since Kojima left Konami, everything that's gone on there. So I have a feeling Konami have looked at maybe Capcom and realized, hang on a minute, we still have one of the biggest franchises in gaming history sitting, just wasting away. Let's bring it all back. And they've done a big U-turn, really. Now, the only thing is, there's a lot of people complaining about, oh, Kojima's not involved in the new Metal Gear Solid remake, blah, blah, blah. Stop complaining. Seriously, be happy that we've got the series back and the IP is back. We're going to get the collection. This looks like there's going to be a 2-part collection as well. I really, really hope we see Metal Gear Solid 4 outside of the PS3, which is pretty much stuck on as well. So anyway, great time to be an MGS fan. As I said as well, that remake is coming. Everybody is massively hyped for that. Anyway, on to my top 5. I'm going to throw in some honourable mentions here as well, but let's start off with number 5. It's Peace Walker. Now, my first experience with Peace Walker was actually on the Xbox 360. I never originally owned Peace Walker on the PSP, but I'm glad I got to actually play it on the 360 first in the end, as it simply incorporated analog controls and it's just so much easier to control than the PSP. As for the story itself, it directly follows on after Metal Gear Solid 3, and you essentially get to base build in essence, and these short mission structures, what I really, really like, and the Fulton recovery system in this game never gets old. It's highly addictive, pretty much extracting everything and anything you can from the maps. But the short, snappy missions in this are really addictive. You can also play this in co-op, which I really, really like. And it was a fine balance between a great story, great action, and also it had some good boss battles as well. And ultimately, Peace Walker set the foundations of which Metal Gear Solid 5 built upon, to an extent, but I'll get into the specifics of MGS 5 later on. Now, next up is Snake Eater, and this might be a little bit controversial for folks to see this at number 4. Yeah, I struggled to decide where I wanted to place this for a long time, but I'm going with number 4. And the reason I'm going with number 4, let's start with the positives first. Absolutely amazing soundtrack. It's a fantastic story, by the way, and it's got some of the best boss battles in Metal Gear Solid history. However, I have some gripes with this game that I just can't let go. Number 1 is the fiddly controls. They're really, really awkward to get used to. Even if you played the game, you come back a few years later, you go play it again, they take ages to get used to. And secondly, the stealth mechanics, because it's so hypersensitive. Sneaking up behind any of the enemies sometimes is a real chore, and 9 times out of 10 you get bloody caught. It's just not that intuitive, and I personally think it's actually a step back, specifically with the stealth mechanics from Metal Gear Solid 2. But overall, it's still a fantastic Metal Gear Solid game, and I actually think this was the right game to choose for a remake. I think the remake, first and foremost, has a great opportunity to introduce modern control scheme for this game, and I'm really, really eager to see what that is. Now, this choice as well will definitely trigger a few, but my number 3 is Metal Gear Solid 4, and I'll explain why. Let's get a couple of things out of the way first. Metal Gear Solid 4 has a massive amount of cutscenes, and I know that pisses off some people. But in fairness, Metal Gear Solid, the entire franchise, has always had elaborate cutscenes. Not as long as Metal Gear Solid 4, that's for sure. But Kojima is a little bit mad, let's be honest with ourselves. But I also can respect what he tried to do here. He tried to close out every loophole in the entirety of the series and ultimately provide full closure for Solid Snake. What I would say during repeat playthroughs, skip is your friend. Now, the other gripe I suppose that a lot of people have with this is if you actually boil it down, there's probably only about 8 hours of gameplay on normal difficulty. What I will say about it is I actually think Metal Gear Solid 4, when it lets you play, has some of the best gameplay in the entire series. Controls wise, action wise, the Drebin shop. There's just so much choice in this game, and just how you approach each scenario is up to you and completely in your control. And it also has some of the coolest endgame bosses that I can ever remember. In particular, the very final one, if everybody knows, it's basically Liquid Ocelot versus Snake. So memorable. So on to number 2, and this was another one that I struggled with for quite some time, but I'm going with Metal Gear Solid, the original. Fantastic game. I think everybody knows what it did for PlayStation 1 in general. One of the greatest action games ever made, really. infinitely replayable. I think that is something of a lost art recently. We get so obsessed about having 40, 50 hour games that whatever happened to games that are 6, 7, 8 hours long, that every time you go and play them, you feel like you want to go and replay them again. It's okay to be able to say, I want to replay a game. Sometimes I think as well there's a mindset that we got to beat a game, we got to move on to the next big thing and forget about something else. I'm never going to touch it again. I think these types of games are everlasting, and Metal Gear Solid 1, it was groundbreaking for so many franchises that came after it. And I think everyone should be so thankful because it changed the face of action games and gaming in general, and it also introduces some of the most memorable characters in video game history. Now I'm going to move into a couple of honourable mentions here. First up is Metal Gear Solid 5. Now I didn't rank this one, and there's a good reason why I didn't rank this one. If you take it at face value as an action game, as an open world action game, this is actually a really, really good game, and it's highly addictive, bear in mind. It elaborates and expands on what Peace Walker did with its systems, and I can respect that. However, I have a couple of issues as well. I think my biggest gripes are there's a lot of repeat content here. Some of the open world feels empty outside of the main bases and the areas. The episodic delivery of this and having to watch a feckin' helicopter cutscene over and over again drove me mad after a while. And it also, I did not like the voice acting changes. It missed out on some bosses and memorable bosses. There isn't really many in this. The story kind of ends in a bit of a thud. So one of the more disappointing games for me. On to another honourable mention here is Twin Snakes. Now I actually was going to rank this. I felt like I didn't want to rank it because I already put MGS 1 on the list. I said I'd slot it in here instead. I actually think this is a fantastic remake. We need to see this as well come back. I think this is in some IP limbo over publishing rights, and something got to do with Nintendo, I suspect, as well. But anyway, as for the game itself, all the voice acting has been redone by the same actors, tweaked a little bit, but not massively or drastically from the original game. And essentially it introduces the Metal Gear Solid 2 systems into a Metal Gear Solid 1 game in a nutshell. And I believe it to be also one of the best looking games of the 6th generation by far. This looks fantastic if you have a Kirby for your GameCube. I have it hooked up to my HD TV. It looks absolutely fantastic. And when I think about it, I've started to choose this over the original when I'm replaying the series. I do play both games though, but my preference is actually this game now rather than the original. Now, if you've gotten to this stage in the video, you would have known now that MGS2 is my number one. And here are the reasons. This game and its mechanics have aged like a fine wine. And not only the gameplay itself, but its story in particular is quite frighteningly accurate at the moment in regards to control of information and AI, where in 2023 those two topics are at the forefront of some of the world's problems at the moment. For me as well, MGS2 has the best control scheme out of the 3 original games. It to me also has the best stealth mechanics in the series. There's nothing more satisfying too than going through the Tanker 11 and getting all the tags available. But yeah, my favourite game in the series. I want to hear what you guys think of my list. Please challenge me, and I suspect there will be a lot of challenges here in the order of which I place these. Drop a comment down below. If you're new to the channel and you enjoy this content, please consider supporting my channel by subscribing, and I'll see you in the next video, guys. Thanks for watching.